the first thing that we want to do is drag in a collection. So up here, you're going to drag in a collection into your workspace. And then we're also going to drag in a table, which will just mark all of our values. And you get a nice little sound effect. Now, we want to look at a bunch of iterations. And so right now, you'll notice there are no rows in your table. To add rows to that, we're going to go up to Collection and highlight New Cases. We're going to follow this for about 20 months. So let's put in 20 as the number of cases that we want and just hit OK. Part of my table has been cut off, so the way that you can drag these around, but you can also change the size by going to the corner. So I'm just going to change the size so that I can see the entire table. Questions so far? Okay? All right. Now, we need something that's going to represent the iterate number. Remember, that's the number of times we iterate. And for our seed, what's the iterate number for our seed? Oh, that's the iterate value, negative 885. But what's the iterate number? How many times have we iterated for any seed? 0. And if you look to the left, the number starts with 1. I need it to start with 0. So we're going to change and add another variable. And so at the very top of this little heading, you can write n. And press enter. And then on the heading for table, we're going to click on show formulas. So under the table screen, you're going to show formulas. Double click on the box underneath the equal sign for n. So basically what that box is representing is the formula for n. And we want to get this to start at 0. So we're going to type into the formula here as a box, case index minus 1. And so what that's going to do is these numbers over here, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 20, represents the case index, which case it is. Case index minus 1 means it'll do 1 minus 1, which gives us 0. The next one will be 1. And so basically what that's doing is it's starting my iterate number at 0.
Then we'll only have 19.
Sorry?
Then we'll only have
Yeah, we'll only have 19. So then press OK, and it should fill them in for you. Good so far? Okay. All right, the next one is going to represent the actual iterate value. So we need a name for it. In this financial mathematics, what is that number representing each time? It's the balance. So why don't we just write balance? It's the balance on your bank account. And we need to write a formula for this as well. So I double-clicked on the formula for balance underneath the balance with the equal sign. And this is the part where we're going to type in that recursive formula. Again, this is something that your calculator won't be able to do, but Fathom will be able to do. So the first thing we're going to write, it's going to be an if-then clause. So if we write if, and then open your parentheses, and it kind of like fills in for you. And you're going to write n is greater than 0. And I'll explain what all of this means in a second.
Is the second one like the not?
Right. So the first one is we're going to write in our actual iterated formula. So what is our formula in this case? 1.01 times what? X, but what does x mean? The previous balance. So we're going to write 1.01 times, and the way to refer to the previous balance is almost exactly what you just said. We're going to type PREV for previous, and then in parentheses, you need to write whatever the name is of that variable. So the name we gave for what the values is balance, so I'm going to write balance here. So far what this is saying is I will take 1.01 times the previous balance, and then what do we also need in this formula? Plus 75. That represents those $75 monthly deposits. In the second row, you're going to write the seed. So the seed we were looking at was if you borrowed negative 885 from the bank. So we're going to write negative 885.
Okay time?
What? Yeah, you can write okay. I just want to read through what this actually means. So what this is saying is if n is greater than 0, so if you look at the n values, for what values is n greater than 0? All of them except for what? When it's 0. So for anything past 0, it will use this formula, the 1.01 previous times the previous balance plus 75. What's the only case here where n is not greater than 0? When it is 0. So that's what this is. So if it's not greater than 0, so if it actually is 0, then this will be the seed value, that negative 885. So that's what this if-then clause is saying. It's if this is true, make the first row happen. If it's not true, then you make the second row happen. So the negative 885 is always where the seed goes in that second box. So we'll press OK, and it'll populate for us. You should have your homework still out, so check through. Does that match what your homework had? Are those the same values that you got from iterating it like 20 times?
Well, I have 13 months to break even, so yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do all that. I just checked the months.
Did it work? Does it agree?
Yep, we have 13 months, and after 2 months, we have 28.5.
Now, the great thing about Fathom is we can also make really nice graphs, so you don't have to graph them all by hand. So to make a graph, we're going to pull in a graph. So you just drag and drop graph into your little workspace. And then we're going to, you can drag in variables as your axes. So what do we want the x-axis to be? Which variable would the x-axis be, n or balance? Iterate number, which is n. So you'll go over to your table. This is my favorite part.
Just drag n down there.
And all you need to do is, if you go up to the name or the heading of that variable, it turns into a hand. So you're going to click and drag, and then drop it until when it highlights the horizontal axis. And it makes a nice little noise.
Pretty.
Question. Oh. Now, in the same way, we will drag in balance, and balance wants to be our y-axis. So when we click and drag, we want to wait until the vertical axis is highlighted, and then drop it in.
Pretty noise.
Pretty noise. You have some other options for your graph. So if you go up to the right hand corner, upper right hand corner, it says that it's a scatter plot. But if I want to connect the lines, you can actually highlight or click on that and change it to a line scatter plot. So this is when the seed is negative 885, but if I want to add another one, then I need to make a separate variable. So let's go back to the original table, and let's look at a different seed. So I need a different variable name for this because it's referring to a different balance that I'm adding. So I can write balance 2 or whatever you want to name your second variable. Again, we'll double click on the formula. And we can type in the same thing. So if n is greater than 0, we'll take 1.01 times the previous balance, but which variable do I want to use for the balance now? Balance 2, because it needs to refer to this new variable. So it's really important that you make sure that these variables match. And then we're going to add 75. And then what seed would you guys like to use this time? What's another seed you used for your graphs? 100? Okay, so it's up to you what you want to put as your seed. I heard Ian's first, so we'll put in 100. And then you can press OK.
Can you put that on the same graph?
Yeah, so I'm going to teach you how to put it on the same graph. So choose whatever seed you want as your second one. Any questions so far? I'll show you again what the formulas look like. You can choose 100 or you can choose a seed that you were interested in looking at. But the seed is always in the bottom row of your little if-then statements. Now, to put two on the same graph, so if we want to add, oh, question, Zoe.
You can go after mine.
Okay. So the way to add this into your graph, if I want multiple lines plotted or multiple sets of data plotted, this is the kind of a tricky thing. We'll need to click and grab this, and then rather than just waiting for to highlight the vertical axis, do you guys see that little plus sign in the upper left-hand corner? You need to add it to that plus sign. So notice now the plus sign is what's highlighted. So what that's saying is it's going to add that entire series. And now you have multiple series in one graph. Some other tools that you can use as you're playing around with Fathom is you can change the scale by going to the bottom or top of either of these, and you'll notice that you can just click and drag the scales. So you can change what your minimum and maximums are for any of your axes. So that's just something nice to know as you continue to use Fathom.